How many of you, the first time you heard about Jesus, you got born again? Nobody. And I would submit to you that if these men, having never seen or heard about Jesus, with him just walking by and giving an invitation, they probably would not have followed him either. But there was a man sent from God whose name was John. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. I figured I'd work in some missionary stories. I went to India some years ago, and it was just an amazing trip. We did. I was there for a full week. We did 3 days of pastors' conferences in the morning. About 10,000 pastors would come out to this. And then in the evening, we did crusade ministry. We had about 60,000 who came out to the crusade meetings. And all throughout the day, we'd pile into the back of a truck, about 10 of us, mostly Bible school students. We'd pile into a truck, and we'd drive out to the outlying villages. This was in Visakhapatnam, and it was just, it was the most miserable nation I've ever been in my life. It was so hot. It was winter there, and these guys are wearing jackets. I didn't stop sweating the whole time that I was there. I don't know if you guys have ever been to India, but you should go. So we go, and we're driving to these little villages, and evangelism was so simple. I don't know if you guys have ever had the privilege of going and sharing the gospel with somebody who has never heard before, but we got the privilege of doing that. We landed in a major airport in Visakhapatnam, India, drove 10 minutes in a truck, and we found people who had never heard the name Jesus. Easily accessible, never heard of him. And so we go in there, and I remember 2 villages in particular. We went into one village, and I remember there was this kid on the trip who just irritated me, man. He knew everything, okay? You ever get around people like this, these know-it-all? And he was trying to critique, okay, guys, when you preach the message, it should look like this. And when you present the gospel, it should, let me pick apart. Let me tell you everything that you did wrong, okay? And so, I don't rejoice over this necessarily, but I was kind of happy to see the Lord teach him a lesson. We went into a city. We went into this little village, and all we did was we'd go into a village, we'd sing Sunday school songs, and people would just come out to hear us. And so we had about a crowd of 100 people, and our know-it-all friend, he began to share the gospel. And they were listening until he got to the point where he said that Jesus is the only way. And there's temples. I don't know if you guys have ever been to India. You can't drive anywhere without seeing temples to other gods all over the place. And he said, Jesus is the only way. These idols won't do anything. And there were individuals in that city who got very upset with him. In fact, we ended up leaving that city as they had pulled out machetes and were threatening us. So we ran to the trucks and we drove away. Not a single person was saved. Even though this guy had his hermeneutically correct, homiletically correct sermon all in place. He had all his points in line. Nobody received. We went to another village. And there was a woman there. She's probably close to 70 years old, white-haired, sweet, older woman. And we got out of the truck, and she gave maybe a 3-5-minute gospel presentation, the simplest thing that I've ever heard in my life. And I was just thinking, man, if Bro's excellent sermon didn't work just a little bit before, I don't think this is going to work. But after she had laid out just this simple gospel presentation, she said something like this: well, that's my story, and that's Jesus. Does anybody want to receive him now? And I watched this village of about 100 people. Every single one of them stepped forward to receive Jesus. Yeah, it's awesome. And I was wondering, what's the difference between these 2 villages? And then we began to ask some of the translators and some of those who were familiar with the area if they had any idea what had gone on. We knew that neither one of them had received the gospel of Jesus Christ prior to that. We knew that nobody had come and preached to them. But in the village where the woman preached, just a few weeks earlier, there was a young boy about 6-7 years old who had gotten sick. And they called one of the pastors. They knew that there was a Christian pastor just up the road, and so they called this Christian pastor who came in, and he prayed for this young boy. The young boy didn't get healed. In fact, the young boy died. And as they were making the funeral preparations, again, just checking up, following up with this time, this pastor came back to the house, found this boy dead, and raised the boy from the dead. This is true. I met this boy, okay? raised this boy from the dead. And he didn't preach the gospel, but you better believe that mom and that dad and that boy, every single one of them were telling their story and about what this Jesus, whom they'd never heard about, they were telling about what Jesus had done for them. And so when this sweet woman comes and says, here's Jesus, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Do you want him? Do you want him? Everybody in that village got born again. Everybody in that village got born again. Listen, there was a man sent from God whose name was John.